Insights from science tech startups. Learn from experienced founders and experts how to build a successful startup. You are listening to the Working with Startups from Science podcast.
Hello, welcome to Working with Startups from Science. Welcome back to our show. Today's guest is a deep tech entrepreneur and a literal pioneer of the new space age, Besan Dahboor Engel, known in the space community by her call sign Astra. She is the founder and CEO of ReVora, a startup building the modular regenerative food infrastructure designed to sustain life anywhere, from urban centers on Earth to future habitats on the moon. But her vision goes far beyond the laboratory. Besan is currently an R&D Astronaut Candidate with Titan Space Industries, preparing for a historical orbital mission scheduled for March 2029 aboard the Genesis space planet. With over a decade of experience scaling deep tech innovations at the Global Entrepreneurship Center and driving sustainability projects across 4 continents, she also brings a unique psychological edge to her work as a certified mindset coach. Today, we are diving into the expansion mindset, the future of space food, and what it takes to bridge the gap between planetary resilience and the stars. Besan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Super happy to be here. And yes, thank you for the introduction.
Thank you. It's an honor. I saw all your activity and you're really active, even with a small family and all your training and different ventures. In the show, we always start from the beginning, from the charging and learning area. And you really grew up in an environment which wasn't, it was with an open mindset, but it was also completely different than what our German listeners normally live through. Tell us a little bit about your early childhood and where it comes from. Where do you take your energy when you think back?
Sure. I was born to a Palestinian father and a Moroccan mother in Jordan. I was since day one raised across cultures, also through interfaith communities. I was raised in a Christian Orthodox school and with a Muslim family, and I lived and worked across 4 continents, and also I studied 4 religions. And as you mentioned, sustainability has been the cross-cutting sector through my career. But back to my upbringing, it has been since day one multidisciplinary, as is reflected in my career. And yeah, I am also today a German citizen. And this diversity brings for me not only a global perspective, as I am integrated in the space sector, it brings to me a universal perspective of how I see and interact the world, from the systems that work or how interconnected through sustainability, but also from a universal perspective, how Earth works and interconnect through the universe. And what grounds me always is going back to my roots, as we see today, the realities of the Palestinian people is very sad, and being as called a very ultimately positive person, to go from these roots to this global experience, to this universal mindset, in and out, gives me very precise and yes, multidisciplinary way of going through challenges and, of course, interacting with diversity.
Amazing. When you talk about this, I studied immigration and settlement in Canada, and the power of diaspora is amazing. I think there's even a Nobel Prize winner now with a Palestinian background in chemistry, I guess. And there should be really someday a book about the Palestinians that are across the world doing amazing stuff, which is possible once you leave a bit the grief and pain and go for a journey. And then it's really a strength to come from such a humble background. And your Jordany is also a really well connected country. Tell us a little bit about how was it? Did you had entrepreneurs in your family or a lot of science around you that was inspiring to you?
So my father was not an entrepreneur, but he was a businessman in retail. My mother was a French teacher, middle class family, but their raising up was very, very focused on science and education. When I was 11 years old, I finished all public libraries in Amman, in Jordan. And I was given by the Queen a gift because I finished the libraries. Of course, in early age, when I reflect and going, of course, through personal development, it is somehow a pressure from the parents to excel. Just to mention, I dropped out from my master's degree in development and I did a technology degree. I do believe education and science is hugely important, but just to go back of how my parents, where they saw the future and how for us, me and my two brothers to go forward is to focus on education and focus on science to have a better life. And that was and has still, of course, been through me on a cellular level, but still I see now the application of science. So my entrepreneurial mindset, which helped me because I don't come from a rigid, I'm not a scientist, but I've been working with scientists my whole career. Actually, one of the best things what I can do is translate science to business world. And this is where, yes, I drifted from the focus where the raise on a very rigid science on its application, how we can apply and how we can solve solution and go from theory to application.
And we will come to ReVora pretty soon, but it's also interesting to see you were in several countries before. You were in Cardiff, you were also Western Cape University, you did a summer school there, in Morocco, Jordan, of course. You're also working for Dubai and Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. So you came across several global hotspots, I would say, especially Malaysia as a very commercial hub. How was it? When did you buy your first ticket? Or when was there a moment where like, okay, this is a business person you look up to, or there you see, okay, the food sector is interesting or the space sector?
Yes, honestly, I can reflect now where I am now, 32 years old, turning 33. But when I see how, when I was 18 and I wanted to study abroad, where this is not common from the environment where I lived, and I was more on a rebel teenage time where I said I cannot stay in Jordan. I want to explore the world. I want to study on an international level. And that pushed my parents to try, but they saw that there is no way. But when I reflect to this, I see it, I had this global mindset. I had the curiosity. I had a lot of questions to be answered. I observed a lot as a child and as a teenager, and I wanted answers. And I knew that these answers are not within the environment that I had. And yes, this is what pushed me. So since 18 years old, I lived on a global level. And of course, I never also reflected on that because from my father's side, being also a Palestinian, he from inside definitely had always the pain, but he also used poets and used not to bring that, but there was always like a missing home for him. So that was also an aspect for me to look for a country more I feel home with than to realize that Earth is my home. And yes, this is where it started, but it was not clear at that time. It's clear for me now, yes, at this age, and when I understand all the steps on all the global exposure that I had and how it shaped who I am now today.
I mean, I grew up in Senegal, so French literature, Saint-Exupéry, and so on, the traveling, where is home when you land in the desert, and what is the human experience? And we are between abundance in some capitals, and then also in the periphery, where you also went in Indonesia and so on, where there's little resources. And when I read your biography, there's always between little resources and abundance, between literature and desert, and it's a good mix because you balance between these two areas. So you had several missions, for example, the Green Quest in Indonesia, and you were a business development director there in remote business development, which is also kind of an very important aspect of your learning journey, right?
Definitely, yes. So financial first security and then more building was very important. So when I was working with Green Quest Indonesia, I was also volunteering in Malaysia with remote communities. So this is exactly how you describe it. I was working on the humanitarian nonprofit aspect, and I was at the same time making sure that I can finance this exploration, what I make. And this brought me always between, which also reflected today, between the ventures, between financial sustainability, economic sustainability, but at the same time working. Some of the aspects were purely humanitarian, but also some social and environmental projects, like the ones I did in Ecuador within Galapagos Islands. So it has been always these two words until they actually merged, where I did not finish my degree in development and then did technology, because I knew if I focus only on humanitarian aspect, only on the social aspect, it's not financially sustainable. And to work only on economic aspect, it's not rewarding on a personal level. I would not be satisfied. And this is actually very well reflected within ReVora, is having sustainability with huge focus on the economic and financial aspect. It was separated in the first years, but then it merged as well while working with sustainable deep tech entrepreneurs and ventures to see how they work on challenging sustainability problems, but at the same time making profitable, which is extremely necessary, profitable ventures and profits as well.
So over your career, you also saw the implementation, the financial flows that go into this region to have economic development, but also some maybe failures or really damages that the financial global system actually also creates by not knowing the local environment, just going with the flow, but not really having the dialogue on the local level. And then you see the technology part, which is very important. We will then deep dive into that as well, like the growth of the solar industry, especially in Asia, which is great, battery development and so on, where this region can leapfrog. So from bad development policies to now more technology and pragmatic approaches. How do you see development aid and now this connection with big foundations that are listening maybe a bit more than before?
That's very hard to answer because development aid is very broad, and each entity, each organization, each community, each local government, and yes, the implementation itself, the goals, and the funding itself, these are all indicators where it goes. And just to sum it up, what I see sometimes is missing is more on the dialogue of the local communities, integration of the dialogue and the opinion of local communities and not necessarily local governments, that they also very well integrated on the implementation process, and as well in the projects, like on a very grassroots level, that they are integrated on how this impact beyond financial is impacting them as local communities. But again, this is very broad. I honestly cannot comment on our overall, because we have very specific region, very specific country, very specific community that I worked with. For example, to give example, in Jordan, I worked with Care International, working with women empowerment programs within sustainable businesses through capacity building, and it was very successful. And you can see on the grassroots level, a lot of not only impact, but sustainable impact. At the same time, there have been programs where on theory, on paper, even in KPIs, is just on paper, but on grassroots level, on community level, there is not a sustainable, not only impact, but also sustainable ongoing of the project, where on theory that's seems very successful. So it's very broad to have an overview on this, but it is super important, again, that it does not come from the perspective of the organizations or the countries only that are providing the aid.
Amazing. I had an interview with Bienvenue Angus. He is working on hidden champions in Germany, and she wrote a book in French, English about Germany, so that Africans understand the German system. It's Germany from A to Z, its culture and its economy. And we also had a discussion about the question of the huge potential, for example, of African countries. The MENA region is quite an important Mediterranean partner for Europe, and also increasingly for Germany. So you also worked in the MENA region, right? So from Morocco to Egypt?
Yes. So from a vision perspective, we are working on a global level. Just the first implementation now will be in the Middle East, targeting desert areas, but also because it's on food security, each region, each country would be different. And to comment as well on the African aspect, I was recently with UNIDO Germany and UNIDO Bahrain in Bahrain, and within a conference, and there was a lot of youth from Africa, and the conclusion, what they said is to stop thinking of Africa in terms of aid. There is a large number of youth that are ready and have the right education and the right skills to go forward, and they are ready. And I'm just repeating what they said. So it's not just in aid, in believing in their technologies, in their innovation, and bringing this forward. And it's more, they also want investments. And again, that they want to be more heard, but actually they can be work because they know their countries better. So that was the comment from the youth from Africa, just exactly repeating what they mentioned. And yes, for ReVora, we're starting Middle East, but it's a global and actually universal, as you mentioned, from deserts to urban cities, and yes, space habitats. But the desert brings one of the most extreme environments where we can work on and replicate with more impact on it, because of the scarcity in the resources in the desert and the scarcity of the water, which is a huge indicator while we're working on controlled environment agriculture.
Yeah, we can already dive into this. So how do you, in these extreme environments, ensure biological stability? I think it's difficult to maintain a space in such an environment where wind, sun, sand is really attacking also the infrastructure.
Exactly. It starts through the materials that we use. space-grade materials. That's also why ReVora is about from space to Earth and not from Earth to space, because we're also utilizing many of the work that's already done. We're not reinventing the wheel within materials. We're using the materials that are within the quality and the cost on the space-grade materials that work on the deserts. And we have full closed systems, so we can give the plants, the crops. We work on multi-crops, because food security, controlled environment agriculture is known for certain greens or some certain crops, but we are working on multiple crops, and we do control that by having a full controlled environment. Another advantage of the desert is because normally this is costly in an energy aspect, but because we do have the advantage to utilize solar energy, of course, with other backup solutions, but the main energy source is solar energy to keep the full controlled environment powered. And then comes the precision of AI. We're also not reinventing the wheel. We're speaking and making initial collaboration with existing AI companies within controlled environment agriculture to build on these data and expand it. It is actually a natural environment where we do give the plants their best environment, where it's controlled with more precision through AI implementation. So this is how we keep the biological environment more controlled. And of course, it's easier on extreme environment as in desert. And again, for the profitability, this is food security full project where we sell the crops and we have them on a prices matching within the market, but at the same time within the same location. We're doing the R&D for space, where it's a moonshot. It's not a direct return on investment, but because it's combined on a dual innovation, we're experimenting on how we can have better controlled biological environment within space through working on this research and development on Earth. So both aspects, the R&D and growing the food, are implemented within the same environment, in the same, not environment as in it's not separated, of course separate, because different plants need different needs, whether it's from light needs to temperature needs, but it's within the same location where we can work on both solving the food security and preparing for a space food and space farming, and in general on a multi-planetary living. This would need time. The biological aspect for that would be still ongoing work for the next 5 to 6 years, but for the food security, it is on execution level and market level by directly selling the crops that we grow.
And I guess water plays also a huge role. You have hydroponic systems, you have probably water access solutions. This is also an important part right now, also in terms of, access. Desalination becomes more expensive. So how do you deal with the water issue, the water challenges?
So the hydroponics by itself saves a lot of water. There is compare it to traditional agriculture, from 80 to 90% saving water. So by itself, that's why also in the desert, it's one of the most viable solutions because of its water safety. And in other urban cities, that would not be an issue. It would be another issue. We can also speak about it, like access to healthy food. And yes, it is by itself the technology. And this is again why I founded ReVora. Controlled environment agriculture is not something new. It has been for a decade. The first project I worked in Jordan with EcoConsult with the government of Netherlands, growing tomatoes, hydroponics 9 years back. What's new is the scalability and the commercial success of the hydroponics. So we're not validating even the technology itself, because it has been validated in terms of water. And yes, it does not have been scaled to this multi-crop and working on real food security issues rather than niche, for example, microgreens or niche greenery. And this, again, maybe for anyone who's new for controlled environment agriculture or hydroponics, would seem futuristic in terms of, for example, a great technology, we're saving water, but actually it's not. So that's the combination we're bringing. And there has been also decades on space food. And this knowledge and R&D has not been intersected with this decade of CAA. And this is what we're doing on ReVora. So we're going beyond water saving. The real challenge is having the right calories and the right healthy crops to feed in, starting with extreme environments, but also where it is needed and not within fertile soil.
Amazing. So you have probably also a really deep human health knowledge, because it's really crucial that you have the right plants on board for the human metabolism, right? So sometimes we need more proteins, or sometimes we need really medical food.
Yes.
Nearly. You had this long journey through the Middle East, Asia, and you see also different approaches to health and to healthy food. And now you combine all these. And we talk about now is this Asian and African century, and the Middle East is right in the middle. It's a crucial part of the world right now. You studied in Germany. We also see the value to be in Europe, which seems also perfectly regulated. So, and you have all these dynamics and you combine it both. Is it here the space where you can connect to the deep tech and space community in Europe? Is that an important part?
Definitely, it's an important part. And I came to Germany to study. I was a D&D scholar. And the main reason why I stayed in Germany, because I married my husband. But this is why, because of my global mind, I always thought about living in many countries. But again, Germany actually right now considered home. And there were, so there are, of course, like every country, there are the positive aspects and the negative aspects. And the negative aspects were very less for me. From a cultural perspective, having first in the beginning this, it is not where you aspire and grow big, I would say, just from an entrepreneurial perspective. But what attracted me the most is this direct way of living. That was for me such a relief to be in an environment where I can be and I can say whatever I want. And this is not, it's not actually freedom. It's just like directness of way of living. So that was the first where I felt very comfortable being in Germany, which is, my brother studied in Germany and he did not have this experience at all. And I know it's very personal and subjective experience. And honestly, on a career-wise, it has been very successful. I was very ambitious. I didn't speak the language at all. And I was very sure that I will continue what I built. I will not start from the beginning and learn a certain area where everybody around me told me, you cannot do it like this in Germany. You must start something else. Maybe your experience on a global level will not be taken. But actually it was. After being very patient for 1 year, and this is where I worked as venture developer as well with entrepreneurs in Europe in deep tech, where I supported them to scale up. When I became an entrepreneur myself, also it's again a dual experience. I had a lot of support in terms of mentors, in terms of ecosystems, but the vision was very global. And what's not being understood, it's sometimes minimized. And I see this where I'm standing now, but at that time it was very hard experience. When I mentioned on working on dual aspect and also from space aspect, many would perceive that this is happening in the next decade and it's not now. Or it's another vertical farming. There's some experiences within that. So there was a challenge in communication and understanding my ambition, but at the same time, I received support from some ecosystems. And yes, some ecosystems were very challenging. Like even in Germany, I had been criticized as a mother, as a woman, very directly on that. And that's minimal, I would say. The overall ecosystem was on international, not international, regional level, very supportive. I was in Stuttgart with Food Brick Accelerator. I was in Bavaria with another incubator where it brought me much forward. And the region where I am in RV, has been a bit challenging, honestly. But again, then I went to the global aspect in Germany. I went to UNIDO. And also the Vertical Farming Association, which work in more than 100 countries. The chairwoman, Christine Zimmermann, she has been working in the sector for more than 10 years, and she supported me. Seeing her support was for me a lot of going forward, because knowing how long she has been in the sector and seeing that where is the future, she invited me on multiple conferences and connected me with a lot of partners, and until today she's supporting me. So that brought me much further. UNIDO Germany are actually the ones who invited me, and for technology transfer, both in Rome to see on a food security with the FAO, with WFP. The ambassador of Germany there until today has been very supportive. And also they invited me and sent me to Riyadh, where I had the initial collaboration also for the fundraising. So on a global level, like the international stakeholders, I received a lot of support. On local level, like on a regional level, not really, but this explains when you have a global vision, where are the right partners to go for. Although we still have many plans to work in Germany on food security, but from different aspects. From a health aspect, from access to healthy food in an affordable way. And on some innovations where that would be within the next steps. Yes.
Amazing. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about food in hospitals in Germany. You know, it's like when you need the most, you get the least. There are always pictures of food in the hospitals, and it's really an area for especially elderly. Maybe we could use less pills and better food in some areas. And so all this base knowledge is really relevant. And just to our listeners, to the young entrepreneurs, you know, really follow Besan, use the federalism in Germany. It's a federal democratic state, and you can go wherever you want and discuss with the most interesting people. They are open. And I also see the female networks going really, really strong. You know, 1 and 1 is not 2. 1 and 1 can be 11 if you meet the right person. The question of the extreme environments are coming to the cities, and Berlin tries also to be one of the most sustainable cities. We have a lot of clean tech startups here, a huge community. Also Munich as well, of course, Munich, Stuttgart, they have the same issues. The centers are too hot. I think it's also in many other countries. So it's really important to have systems in place which are the most efficient possible, and also to get the best food out of. Maybe you have some idea about that.
Yes, definitely. And there's a lot of buildings that are underused that we can turn them to food production. There is some startups within this field. However, I always focus on the scalability and going commercial and speed of that as well. On going from not only ideation, but this is what I work as well with deep tech entrepreneurs, what's so-called a valley of death, where a lot of years and funding is within R&D, and it's not going to the market even, and even if it goes to market, it's not go to the scalability. And not lot of rigidity to reinvent the wheel, because innovation is not necessarily always invention. We can bring multiple aspects and multiple disciplinaries and multiple technologies together, so we can go with the speed of implementation and not spend a lot of time where both are important, but when solving critical issues, such as having local healthy food production that is also within green energy or energy efficient, and access with whether within homes or through buildings that are not being utilized, is actually a very critical goal, especially in this current time. So to spend years on R&D just to reinvent the wheel within some aspect that is already in the market, or even transferring some technologies and adapting them later on a local level, having the global, which I have the global perspective. I see the earth when I look for solutions, which solution has been already implemented and how we can localize this. And yes, this is the next plans that would be in Germany, but of course we need to go forward now where we're starting, because also we can, for what we're building in which will be in Saudi Arabia, it can be in a different way, also localized here. It will be different, not technology, but a different implementation, but it does have the general concept within controlled environment agriculture. And yes, that would be replicable within different regions. The only aspect is, because controlled environment agriculture so many times is accused that it does take away farmers' work. And the main reason also why I found ReVora also have been working on this work is that we have the issue also of soil degradation. It is actually a fact in 2029 that 90% of the soil will be degraded based on FAO data, and that the issue of having soil degradation, even in the fertile soil countries, brings that we must have solutions that are hybrid, that also soilless. So it's not about taking the jobs of farmers, it's bringing solutions to the current and future issues. So if we have a country that's fully fertile in soil and farming is the main driver of economy, that of course would not be necessary, but there is high imports or access to not having access to healthy food on affordable terms, or in extreme environments, there is no soil. This is where it comes, and that's all over the world have different scenarios, whether it is crisis zone, or it's a remote island, or it's like what we have in Canada in terms of temperature, or a desert, or an urban city. The controlled environment agriculture is a solution for that.
Mm. Yeah, there's so many learnings for young founders in what you are saying. I like this bold move of saying it's a moonshot and it's a pilot project in Saudi Arabia. You have been to many places which have hostile environments, and that's where a deep tech startup should go to really challenge the technologies that you are integrating. But you probably also saw a lot of project failures, pilot projects failures, and not being sustainable and not having a second, third phase because the commercial idea behind it was not there. So there are technical issues and there are commercial issues.
Definitely.
Maybe you can dive into some learnings where you were like, okay, this error I won't make, or I won't make it again.
Yes, definitely. It's going back from the end goals. So starting with, just in our case, starting with the supply chains before even starting implementation of the project, and even selling the project before starting it. We expanded as well in Bahrain before even we started, but just on a commercial level, bringing the whole supply chain, bringing the end consumers, because in our case, because the consumers are not just B2C. First, it's B2G. We work with government because it's an infrastructure project. And that's why I keep the focus. I am the only founder until now. we did not have co-founders, so I'm driving this on a founding level where I did not want to expand so much to keep the focus, but still I wanted to see if we can also have the project re-implemented with other governments to see the commercialization of it. This is one aspect. The second aspect, after we're talking about crops and having aspects like branding, having aspects like the whole supply chain, where it goes, having the network within that, with the right networks, like local networks, for example, in Saudi Arabia, local partners, local governments, before even starting, to guarantee that. Another guarantee, of course, with the technical aspect, on the commercial aspect, before we start, we already have, yes, our customers and our branding there. So, and that, of course, within very limited resources, is only in building what can be done by founders is building the network, because if there's no budget for branding and no budget for a lot of communication or even traveling, initiating conversations, it's very feasible to approach the end customers, whether they are B2C or other businesses, B2B, or also in our case, B2G governments. And that has been the work for the past 6 months as well, that working through this whole supply chain with different partners, stakeholders, and customers.
Yes, amazing. And you mentioned also some accelerators like Brickfruit, which have currently a call open. So if you're a founder in the area of food tech, health tech intersections, you might have a look into it. And so one part is really like strong networks where the guerrilla tactics are shared, where you get the hints to how to leapfrog some areas, how to avoid the pitfalls of founding. Don't build too much on your features. They're important, but it's also important to sell to big entities that can actually leverage you. Talent makes capital dance, the other way around as well. So you had a lot of learnings also from your cooperation with VCs. So you know how they look into the numbers. So you're probably also a very data-driven startup that can come up also with real numbers where they say, okay, they have systems in place.
Definitely. Yes, definitely. With the VCs, I have long experience. Just to be honest, the way we're working with ReVora on an infrastructure, I knew that it would not be a full VC focus. And this is also another advice, is to diversify, because startups always think about VCs. For example, the investors we have now are family office, where it was very important to think in generations and have also the impact aspect very strong. Of course, there might be some impact-based VCs, but the conversation, and I knew that I would maybe waste some time to talk with VCs. So my focus was, it's just, you need to know the business model, because it's not wrong when your business model is not matching to VCs. There are multiple ways of funding, and just starting whether with angel investors or family office, or for example, that's why I approached UNIDO, because UNIDO brings the United Nations from a commercial perspective. I didn't know that they exist, but also through the Vertical Farming Association, they are the one who introduced me. And when I knew that this exists, I was surprised. Okay, and that's exactly what we do. We are for profit, but we're also working on a huge agenda on sustainability, not only food security, energy, and even on space, at the same time of this global perspective. And to be honest, I did not approach VCs. Maybe later in the future, or within Germany, but in the first 8 months, I did not speak with VCs, but I still have the logic needed, which helped me a lot. And I was looking what type of other funding we can attract that they can understand our global vision, but still they see the ROI that is very short term. And another aspect, even from in Germany, for example, we spoke with NRW Bank. That was also a great experience and a great understanding from their side. It needs a logic in terms of numbers, but it does not have this pressure of direct profit or only on profit. So that was also like having it as a bankable project. It's especially when you have some signed MOUs of the future customers, that would be a case to go for bankable projects as well.
Yeah, that's, I think, also a stronghold in Germany. We have quite some wells in the Mittelstand, in the hidden champions, which then have family offices, which are, because these are family-run businesses over generations, they can do this kind of investments and have the analysts, business analysts that then look also to diversify the portfolio, not just real estate, but also some tends into deep tech startups such as yours. And it takes some time. It's a bit slower, but it can be more sustainable because you have more time to think stuff through and also to build the right partnerships like you have with the UN program. And there I saw also on the pictures, there are a lot of female leaders. Do you see, it's kind of interesting how the startup world is changing, and there are some really great examples where you get really female networks coming out of these areas, and they have a totally different approach, more sustainable, less aggressive. I would even say it's also a different way of communicating, which is also more and more looked for, right? Because it's what man is doing currently in the world is really, even from hormones driven, right? It must go now. It has to go now. We are breaking walls, but not the right way sometimes. Have a look on the issue of, okay, how can we make this work for everybody?
Exactly. Yes, definitely. Like from a scientific perspective, I don't know biologically how accurate is this, but through history, the woman roles were about nurturing, and it is built through history in our biology. It is by default, I'm not sure, but this is a fact that how women think, and is also very broad, have same women, but I am a woman and I do think differently of how I see the future. And this is very important as well in terms of diversity. I would not mention any time that I am a feminist, not because of anything, because I don't like labels. I don't like do certain labels, but sometimes I feel I have to, because there are some realities that you need to face, because I can have this global mindset, I can have this open mindset, but then you interact with people who don't have that. Then they see you, and the first time they perceive you that you are a female, and then they have a list of, I would not say judgment, but the list of imposed beliefs on how you do things. And that's what makes it challenging. But at the same time, I see in general, in Germany, this is really great because you can more easily fight it than other countries. It's not existing, but you can bring it. And I had not multiple, but couple of incidents where I needed to have that. But at the same time, I see the positive side that it is much needed, because the generational thinking, the exclusive thinking, you look at the kids and like when my child is around me while I'm working, it is connected. I do think about the next generation. I do build that his generation and the generation after him do not have the challenges that we have. Because why? What's the evolution then in these terms? So just having this thinking within the mind, which I believe in the mind of many women and many mothers, will put different aspects on how to found businesses and how to make impact. And of course, never the profits must be this financial sustainability, always must be there, but just integrating these aspects of generational, which is what sustainability is all about. It's just the next generation that they don't have the challenges what we have now.
Yeah, I think it's a great time to be a leader and to think. Nicole Jäckel, professor on controlling here at the BHT, Berlin University of Technology. She said she was in the 80s and 90s, and it was even harder. Like she went to UK, and they were more advanced than the Germans, and she came back with a PhD, and really was pushing Siemens to new heights in sales controlling. But there were, of course, men that were like, I know how to sell. And she was always thinking to herself, you're welcome, to keep this positive mindset. And it's also a big part of your journey, the question of how do I build a system for me, but also for others, even if you get resistance or you get some people that are in this old closed mindset, yet they were successful, no question about it. But they keep their success to themselves, and it's a success model that is overrun by new systems globally and by new talents globally. But because there are so many of them in Germany, you need tools.
Yes, I don't like this role. There are so many challenges in the world. If we stay silent about them, it's not because anyone would enjoy that, but or even like as an entrepreneur, you have limited time. You need focus is the best currency, and if I'm not focusing on innovation, on the vision, on execution, and I'm focusing on, I would not say necessarily fighting, but putting all these boundaries around, then this would put the speed of how I go, then a man would go that would not have to go these challenges. And I was in a sustainability related bank, and I was in an accelerator. And for example, I heard, you are running this business successfully because you're a woman, you are the product, you don't have products. Like hearing something like that coming up, and I was thinking, if I don't put boundaries on this, then it will be repeated. And if I'm working on an impact and I don't make this side, it's not only about impact, but this side work that needs to be done around, then it will continue. Maybe I would not fully stop it, but I think one by one we can, because as you said, like just from a global, again, universal perspective, I understand why it's there. It's just not empathy, but I understand why, and having understanding why people think in a way is not a reason why not to stop them, at least on the personal level. It does not affect me personally, and this is very important for female founders, that they don't take that personally, that does not bring them down, but just to take the role of, okay, I can make something about it, and it should not affect me personally or professionally. And this is, yes, the extra work that needs to be done by women until today, also in Germany, to go forward, yes, with whether entrepreneurs or scientists or in any sector that is not very common to have females within it.
And you learned and trained also this because you're also in a program to become an astronaut. So you need to stay calm when, CO2 is too high, or, you have technical issues and you have to keep your mind calm. How is this also affecting your work? It's this important part, your daily training, where you think, okay, I have my business, but I also have my training. What can we learn from you in terms of focus and self-control, but also, this altruistic mind that you have, that is also important to have to actually to build teams, right? You also need a lot of teamwork. Even if you say you're a single founder right now, you also work in teams.
We have a lot of collaborators. Definitely, you have a lot of yes. And for being an astronaut candidate, what changed? I've been working on personal development also for a long time, but this is a different level of thinking. And if I would summarize it, I see myself as an astronaut now on Earth, as Earth itself, as a planet that very similar to be within a spaceship, and everything, whether it's resources, people, challenges, is within this. So my view has fully altered on where I am living and what I'm doing and how I'm interacting with others, because definitely it does reflect. I have the training, and it does reflect how I lead and how I see challenges and how I see the world, whether it is of course, on team building and like, for example, in a case, even if we go on some challenges, for example, through judgments or through being a female, normally as an astronaut, you need to fix very fast and go forward. And for example, on Earth, that would not be very possible, but it just gives you the mind of fix and the mind of speed. So you don't, and you can't have resilience. So you can, is being depressive or a negative state is a luxury, because you can be a negative, you will always be a negative state, but would you stay for 1 minute, for seconds, for days or months? But thinking as an astronaut, it needs to be the fastest possible. So just having this resilience, acknowledging the states, and how long do I stay within this state, and how it will affect my mission. So having this reflection, it actually brought me much further within this, which I really have the mission also to share this, because nobody needs to be an astronaut candidate, but everybody can have this mindset that can bring them much, much further. And yes, mindset work has been, I've been working on it and coaching, more advisory aspect. But this, since I starting the training and even this perception, it just shifted how fast I go with challenges, the level of emotional resilience, and how I see the interaction, not only with teams. This is what we mentioned. This is another mission I have, which is the peace building. You don't have to be an astronaut. You really know that everything is interconnected. And having any challenge, any part of the world is affecting other part of the world. So anyone who have a genuine interest of a better world, a global challenges is how you see that. And then coming it on the local and the daily aspects, it's okay not to understand, it's okay not to agree, it's okay even not to like, but then you have a common mission of whether we want to have a better world or not. And by evolutionary aspect, each human wants to have a better world. And that's on a biological level. So just having this shift, just knowing, makes seeing the world more in a positive way, but from a scientific perspective. And then it looks like, where did it start? It actually started with childhood. That's why part of my mission is not only teaching on space, tech, on technologies, is this what astronauts call the overview effect, is when you see the Earth as one system. When you see the Earth from above, but you don't have to be an astronaut, you just understand it. And when children understand that, it's not about acceptance or diversity or so. You cannot like others or even have an opinion about it, but it's just you understand how this interconnectedness from a scientific perspective. And yes, that's also a part of mission that I would like to work on peace building. I was invited to the State of the World, and they work on different intellects. And I'm very humbled that they want to drive a campaign to nominate me and other Palestinian people and other Jewish people for Nobel Peace Prize. I never said that in public because I was not sure, because I didn't want to go in any political aspect that's actually against my values. But this is, yes, also was inspired by my training. It's like how also I can understand peace building from an overview effect. How can this really be achieved? Even if it's not for our generation, the generation on next, it starts with this awareness, and not a naive awareness of peace. I really like everyone else, or there's no borders, just as you see Earth, no borders, no, but just this interconnectiveness of having it. You can have your own way, but we should work together to have our evolution, even if we don't like each other.
Yeah, I think it's an important part. One founder said, we all have traumas, but the important part is the obsession.
Yes,
and of course, in Germany, and you need also an obsession which is realistic to a certain part, which is altruistic as well, which has a bigger ground than just your personal health or your personal financial success. And once you understand this systemic interdependencies, you become a systemic entrepreneur as well, where you connect the dots, and you also think sometimes, okay, we need a neutral ground. So I really like people from diasporas. I had a great Jewish professor in Toronto, Semiatiki, and the openness and the mindset, also the pain they have. Of course, they come from an area where they don't want to go back. They have the Israeli passport, but it's really painful, and they have to explain their own why they're not in their country. It's a pretty clear why they're not in their country, but they're doing the best for diversity, for talents in the other country, and thereby helping also the human Jewish community. So if you go, you have a cultural background, you have an ethnic background, but it's independent from a bad government.
Exactly. Yes. And this is what we said about the boundaries. On personal level, when we say things that have been, even if I understand where it's coming from, even if I understand you're traumatized, even if I understand you're conservative, but then when you come and attack me and I say, okay, I'm busy, I do something else, I have the privilege to think like that, some people not, then this is the other aspect, which some people like to call it truth or good or bad. I don't think this is necessary. It's necessary is just to have the abstract way of seeing things, just like killing children is wrong. That's a universal aspect. Having illegal acts is wrong. Okay, you have some needs, you have that we can work on, but just to work on the very abstract, and just having millions and billions of money going to brainwash or people, it shows how humanity is really good, because you need to put trillions actually to change their mind to believe some good things, or like, we don't want to go into good and bad, but let's say also as an abstract, some bad things are good. And that shows really, and this is not just on the case of Palestinian Israeli, is you see it on different ways. And my generation, I also have a privilege to see that through screen. Others are experiencing that, but it just bring not a transparency, but just bring another level of how things work. So the first step is acknowledging, really on a very abstract level, and that's responsibility for everyone actually. And this is also the interconnectedness. Even if I think this is out of my scope or near, or these people do not look similar to me, or yes, maybe I don't like them at all, maybe I don't care, that's okay, that's can be very human, but it's just see how this is interconnected to me. We do live on this earth together, and this is affecting everyone, and this is awareness, because this is where humans act when they know that it's affecting them. And it's a pure science that is everything happening in the world is affecting, maybe for a short period, but when we think in generations, then, and we really, which also I believe all, but if not all humans want to have a better life, then we understand this. And it can sound very unrealistic, it's like a world without wars, but I think if you see also through history what humanity have been gone, I do believe that's possible. Because like from the caveman to what we have now, yeah, maybe at that time that was not possible. Or maybe the way of distribution would be on a different level, on an evolutionary level, as we don't have dinosaurs now to fight with, and these would be a different way of dinosaurs. So it's not from unrealistic positivity. I do believe that's possible, and not from a naive way of everybody likes everyone, and from that peace building. No, not at all. Diversity is very important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we have now the area of global talents from all over the world, from Sri Lanka, from Rwanda, and so on, and Palestine. And it's all about the open mindset that, it doesn't makes sense to close down on depression and trauma. You need some luck, of course. Luck is a big part of life, that you're not killed on the street and so on, and that you have the right food. So, but then you have this curve. You have a lot of people which are uninformed, some which have no information at all. And then you have a lot also on the other curve that have a lot of information. And with the internet, you have startups in Rwanda, which are very successful, and makes it very interesting to have their pilot projects in Rwanda on energy, on food, and so on. Or in Saudi Arabia, they're radical. They have a lot of money, so of course they can do amazing visionary projects. But they are open to failure. It's not like the end of the world. And here, it's really important. Like I see it in Germany and in the US, we have areas where there's no information. So we have either a lot of artificial social magazines, which are about superficial stuff, super happy, but actually happy to sell you products which you don't need. So the whole hyper-capitalism, selling products which are in the system and not thinking about, okay, what is a sustainable social economy? And we are losing a bit this out of sight also in Germany. So we have right-wing movements which are nourished by lack of information, lack of mobility, lack of openness, lack of mindset. And it always works for those that are on top, which have an overview, but they translate it for their sheeps, for their community, into a pretty narrow framework. And that's a challenge, I think, currently in these times. It's like that's why I like podcasts, because people are listening this while they're traveling, and they have an overview of what's going on in the world and what amazing projects are out there. And we can learn from each other, from all the continents have different environments and different cultural backgrounds, but there are some really first principles about how a good life is. And
Yes.
And you are, last time before we finish this round, the space aspect, isn't it challenging as a human being to say, okay, I want to do this, and this is everybody that do this few minutes just going straight up the air, and then suddenly you're in space. I think it's another world. It's also makes the world appearing more fragile, because we are really on a thin line living. And you talked about the soil questions. We have the air pollution, the whole aspect of, can we repair this? Is it possible, even if the momentum of existing closed systems which are running on fuels, where do you see us in, like, you will be in space in the 2030s probably, what kind of world will be then in 10 years?
I see it's like the introduction of airplanes, where traveling to another country was very radical or very extreme, and then it was a bit transited, and then now traveling to another country is not a huge or something. I do believe there are still people who never were in an airplane and see that very something very still and from an exploratory perspective, still very curious, or they don't know how this functions. But I do, not to the level, but just like the introduction of the airplanes, and going with, of course, with more robots as well, but with humans, because if we want to build cities, we also need humans there. And this is what Titan Space Industry is actually building on that. So I do see that we're going to this future. And I also hold the responsibility that we don't bring the same mindsets. And so we're fighting on different planets as well, and to have that. And that is for the very few as well. So that's why you have UNOSA, the United Nations for Outer Space Affairs, which I was 3 years ago or 4, I'm not sure honestly. In Bonn, they had the World Space Summit, and it was very inspiring to see as well how to bring from a policy perspective, because so many Elon Musk did a great work to commercialize that, but so many people think this is the space traveling, like what, because he's a figure within that aspect, but it's actually much more, even from a policy perspective, from a human level perspective, the importance that children in nations, that they have space agencies and sovereignty and even this diversity within space is as important as we have this now on Earth, and this is all this competition, and again having female-led, so less competition, biologically or not, again, this is very important. So I do have as well the responsibility, again, with this, what I mentioned with the overview effect, that we start, it's not about we going to space and forgetting about our challenges here, which there are some startups or even many scientists, which is amazing. This is their focus, only space. But what I'm doing, and this is the vision, is through space, we start on solving these challenges and not to bring them in the space, because I can see I'm a futuristic by I would say maybe by nature, but this is how, even when I ask my husband, they go always in the future. And yes, I do see this future, and this gives me much bigger responsibility to care about it, which I know it's not a very easy conversation. It can be seen like, this is unrealistic, what you're talking about, and even coming back, even to my roots, like what is happening now, the reality is happening in the world and the future, but for me, it's all interconnected. And yes, this is the obsession, what you spoke about. This is the obsession, yes.
Yeah, I just had an idea for a perfect space simulator to actually, break up people in depression. Like some say LSD is a perfect psychedelic drug to open up to trauma, but it's more like, okay, there's a risk that, people that are depressive and negative. But I see a future where, because it's a biochemical problem and it's an environmental problem. So if you live in an urban space without greenery, and bad food, you get depressive and probably right-wing and less informed and so on. So of course the state cannot force people to happiness. We're not allowed to. There's certain freedoms. But if these freedoms lead to destruction and to violence against women and against the future, then it's important to have a health system in place where maybe there's a space simulator where a depressive kid can jump in and feel how it feels to leave the Earth.
Yes, definitely. And this is also, actually, I can send you within our slides, we have this trauma response where we have we call them cells where we grow. It's also a trauma response aspect, because from my personal experience, maybe it says second-hand trauma, because you just witness how my father, he studied in Morocco, he came back, he lost everything, no identity, nothing. He lost all his parents through screen, and I just witnessed that, but I never, like, secondhand. So just being, and of course what's happening now, just being able to switch and having this, but at the same time not losing, of course, the empathy. It's not that I don't care, or it's just to see how this perspective. So I am a live example to see that, of course, this is more than possible. And this is why I'm also very driven to this work. And this is where I see the future also, because even from trauma response first, but then also to building these mindsets, to have this, even to work leaders, so they can sit and see that and see what they are fighting for, because it would shift this awareness. Every quantum leap, every evolutionary leap within humanity did involve, by its base, a sense of awareness, or a sense of, okay, I see this now differently. And yes, that's the very, again, as it's called, the overview of the space. And this is why I wanted to be an astronaut. And I was scared that people would have fun because I don't come from a background, what is always needed to be an astronaut candidate. But this is why I'm thankful also for Titan Space Industry, because they're opening this internationally. They are implementing Space for All. We are fully funded on everything, on our training. And yes, that's a huge privilege that if I don't utilize it for such an impact, it wouldn't make sense. Yes.
Yeah. Great. So for listeners, I think we can wrap this up. Look for ReVora. There's a lot of information also on the website. Follow Besan also on LinkedIn. She's really transparent on where she's right now and the networks that she is building. Besan, so maybe again a point on resilience or some learnings, that the 3 core learnings.
On resilience?
Or in general, on the entrepreneurship part, it's a core issue, but also on this, like, balancing these 3 big areas of, keeping a learning mindset, keeping a family grounded lifestyle, and keeping also the visionary.
It is hard, what I would say, but it's actually about taking responsibility fully of outcomes. So, which includes the personal aspect. Take full responsibility of every outcome. I know that if I need or want certain outcome, it is my own responsibility. First is this ownership, and then it gives power back. Of course, this will not, it's resilient, does not stop of all the challenges, does not stop some bad days, but also, again, how long to give yourself time, minutes, seconds, days, week of how long I would stay in a, let's say, negative state, and just being 100% self-sovereignty, that I do own the outcomes of my life. And this makes not the challenges stop, but they make them very much easier to navigate. Yes.
And the second one?
And the second one for resilience, it does come after this, is this awareness, because in awareness and identity work, because when you're an entrepreneur, you do jump from one aspect, whether, for example, whether it's about funding or having a certain product or having an MVP. So when you go on steps, it's very different from if the past experience and work, even if it's a very creative work. On an identity level, when you work from one aspect, you go one milestone to another, you literally become another person. And to first be aware of what a new identity I am emerging, or I have to have this outcome, which again is a resilience, and what I needed to go. And this work, it sounds maybe easy, but it's actually not easy. And there's a grief actually of taking out identity. And if you go on a speed of entrepreneurship, that's very quick. That it's actually, it might be environments around you would not recognize you. It might be, I am very blessed as well with having a great relationship with my husband. He has been with this journey with me, I don't know, multiple identities, all of this together, and trying to keep up of every expansion we have. But also that meant that socially that would not align, and there is a grief on each personal identity. It's like, I'm not this person anymore, and I'm this milestone and this milestone. And being aware of this identity shifting, I would say, and expansion, it brings resilience much higher, because it's clarity. It's like, okay, this is what's happening now. I'm working on this product, but now I'm selling it, but now I'm going on a national level, but now I'm going global. For that, it needs a different operating system of, identity. And it's a continuous work if you're an entrepreneur. It does not stop.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful mixture of female reflection and entrepreneurship that you are describing. And I think men sometimes lack this. Men go into total failures sometimes. Men die earlier. They get more depressive. Suicide is mainly a male thing. Violence is mainly a male thing, and there's a lack of awareness that your brain is connecting the wrong way, and this neurological programming that also, high sport leaders are doing is like, okay, how can I then move through this challenge and where I'm now and what is actually happening in my brain? And while I failed, am I ready for the next step, or do I need to keep programming myself? And this is, I think, one female superpower, which female have not connected so much to entrepreneurship. And what you just described is really something quite important, which men have to learn more. There are some men that are meditating and are successful entrepreneurs, and they know you have to keep everything wired and look after your system, because it's quickly that you spend too much money on cars and you are out of the race.
Yes. Definitely, yes. And this is, some people call it masculine, feminine energy, which need to be in both. There's imposed environments of men need to act in a way and women need to act in a way. Same time for women or females, if they are only on reflection process and not execution process, that will slow them, that will not bring results, that will bring clarity, but where's the results? It's like, I know what I want to do, I know which identity, I know which, as you call it, programming, but okay, once you know it, where is the execution? And that's what, by environment, also men tend to be, yes, more on action oriented, but this is also the constant reflection. So it's about balancing both these words, because again, a third point for resilience is to do action no matter what. So whatever is happening is the next action. As you reflected, it's either I see it as a failure or I reframe it differently with full logic and go forward. How long I say in this state, what can be perceived as failure, or lot of learning. It's a lot of learning what goes next and then next and next. And yes, that's the action-oriented living in between. And after some time, it becomes automatic. But again, for the first one on the identity, sometimes it's very surprising that we become very comfortable in some identities that we don't know that they are identities. And when we want to expand to another success or level, then it seems like the word is going down, but it's actually great. It's actually going to the next step. So if any of early founders facing a tragedy or what they would call failure, is actually how you would have the story about it and which awareness you have, and most importantly, what action you would do from that.
Amazing. Besan, so many learnings right here about complete sustainability, about the intersection between space and Earth technologies and how this is actually driving us into a better future. It was really an honor. People, if you're interested to learn more about what Besan is doing, she has her company, ReVora. It's the first company to commercially connect the space sector with food security. It spans the work across space R&D, material and system innovation, food security solutions, even tourism application and industrial innovation. And the focus is always on building a model grounded in impact, scalability, and long-term sustainability. Thank you very much, Besan. It was really a pleasure and a learning for myself to have this interview with you.
Thank you very much for having the space as well. I really am super honored.
Okay. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep in touch.